Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast by fans for fans, where all the content is absolutely free. Tonight, as always, we're coming to you in association with Forrest Precision Engineering. I'll be your host this evening, Rob Fawcett, and tonight we're going to be looking back at yesterday's game against Hibs, as well as what's potentially in store for us over the summer. But before I do that, I'd encourage you all to visit the Gersnet website. Not only do we have our main website with a host of quality articles and online museum, but it also hosts our popular forums, which are a great place to keep up to date with the latest Rangers news and discussion. Now, tonight, as always, we are live on YouTube, and we'd ask that you continue to spread the word amongst your friends and family, share the pod on social media, subscribe to the channel, as well as stop by the forums and join in the chat there too. Now, before I introduce my guests, I need to give another mention to our partners over at Forrest Precision Engineering. They're a Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for a number of years, and we're delighted to have them supporting the pod. If you want more information about them, please visit the website at www.forestprecisioneng.com. They also have a stunning executive lounge in the iBooks main stand, and for more information on that, you can email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Now to introduce my guests for this evening, a couple of OGs from the Gersnet stable, helping me out, the little rookie out. We have Mr. Alex Anderson. How you doing, mate?
I'm fine, thanks, Rob. Fine, thanks. And it's nice to be on with a nice host, that's going to treat me. When I was my rookie days, there was this guy Bennett. I mean, it just what he picked me through, mate. What he picked me through. Head down the toilet stuff and all that. It was hard going, but I soldiered on. And I got there. I still wake up with the cold sweats every now and then, but it's nice to be on with somebody who knows how to do this gently. Rob, thanks, mate.
Well, hopefully he'll be gentle for me tonight. Obviously, the other half of the dynamic duo is Mr. Ross Bennett. Good evening, Ross. I think it's the first time I've been on with you, mate.
I think it is. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, mate. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. I'm absolutely thrilled that the season's over, to be honest. I shouldn't say that coming on a Rangers podcast talking about Rangers. And I am absolutely delighted that there'll be no Rangers for the next 2 months. I mean, it's been torturous, hasn't it? It's been awful. It's been hard. It's been difficult. So I'm pleased to be here. I'm pleased we can put it all behind us and try and be optimistic about what's going to come over the summer.
Well, you say there's going to be no Rangers, mate, but we've got an impending takeover, a new manager, hundreds of new signings. So I'm pretty sure that Twitter and any social media that we subscribe to is going to be blown up with different opinions about how one manager can't do the job and another manager should get it, etc., etc. But yeah, I echo those sentiments. I don't think I've been as glad to hear a final whistle to bring a season to an end as I was yesterday. It's just been one of them. We can park it, forget about it now, and look forward to what's coming over the summer. And I guess it was encapsulated by the statement tonight by the club, obviously thanking Barry and the management team for their service. And I don't think it was any surprise, to be honest, that news was coming. And I think for me, the performance that I'll always remember during the last 3 months of Barry's reign is going to be that result over in Fenerbahce. I think we dominated them that night. Could easily have taken 5 or 6 off them that evening, but I think it's kind of similar to what happened for the rest of the season. I don't think there's been many positives like that, and results over the piece just haven't been good enough. But the one thing you can never doubt about Barry is how much he loves the club. And I think, we need to be thankful for him for stepping up when probably a lot of others wouldn't, due to the short-term nature. How do you think people are going to remember him, Alec?
Oh, I think he's going to be the ghost at the feast for any manager the next 10 years that takes over, because he's done that thing. He's come in and he's proven a real Rangers man can steady the ship. That's the problem, and we're obviously going to be getting a lot of guys in. Hopefully, just one new manager for 2 or 3 years, and then the line of succession will be all sorted out and organised, and we'll win treble after treble. But if anybody falters at all, I think the kind of the body of the support, the minority of the support that thinks a real Rangers man can do the job better. Well, he's proved that. I love Barry to death. I really do. And I fell out with my wee bit. I've never met him. He doesn't know about this, but I fell out with my wee bit when he took over. When he the way he left the club, I thought he was undermining Le Guin as well back in the day, and then Walter has taken to get rid of him that way. And that was for a guy who is one of the best midfielders I've ever seen in my life. And the fact he's a Rangers man, I could tell you about things I went through with his brother as well. His brother was my favourite player in the 80s, mid-80s when we were crap. There's his nephews went and won the Coppa Italia the other night. Barry, when he come back for Blackburn, I thought, why are you doing that? Prove yourself down there. But he come back and he told, no, it's too easy in English Premier League. There's not enough pressure. I love Rangers. He made me feel I didn't love Rangers as much as him. It's a long, complicated relationship. And the minute he got that job, I was terrified for him. Just the love came out. I was worried for him, like you're worried for a wee brother or something like that something terrible was going to happen. And he's held the fort splendidly and given us a few bonuses as well. And that the win at Parkhead, first win at Parkhead in 5 years, not losing either of his games to Celtic was tremendous for him and for us. And the win, as you say, over in Kadikoy, over in Istanbul, was just a phenomenal night. And I think Patrick Stewart or whoever, they deserve credit for the perfect kind of interim head coach or caretaker manager, as all guys like me would call it. The perfect appointment. They came in and did the job he was supposed to do. And as soon as the season's over, they've gently moved him on as well.
And to be fair, we've had ups and downs. I mean, defensively, I don't think we've looked at a solid proposition. But I guess, Ross, I know it's going to be unlikely to happen, but given the comments he made when he kind of first took over, but having seen the improvement in the likes of Dio, Barron and Raskin specifically, given they play in midfield, and he's obviously one of the best midfielders ever played for the club, do you think there could be a place for him in the coaching setup going forward, or do you think he would accept anything like that? Because I know he said before that he wouldn't want to do that, he'd just go back to being an ambassador, but we need people that know the club and have played for the club and get the club in that backroom team, don't we?
Yes, I do think there's a place for that. Whether it's Barry, there's all talk that that's what Pedro Caixinha done when he went out and got Jonathan Johansson, for example, slightly different. But I'm actually going to be a little bit less generous than Eck was there, because, and I do agree, I suspect that taking on that position, what was it, 3 or 4 months ago, was deeply, deeply unattractive to any potential manager. A basket case of a squad that had given up a league title that was already gone. You're out of both cups. You've got an opportunity in Europe, but no expectation that you're going to go on and win that. I think Barry has, in some ways, in my opinion, let himself down in certain areas. And what I mean by that is, before the Dundee United game on Wednesday there, 2 hours before that game, the Daily Record ran an article about how Jack Butland is back in the starting lineup, right? And this afternoon, the Daily Record have run an article about how Barry Ferguson's not getting the job, but he did have an interview and held extensive talks with Steinson and Thirlwell, the director of football, sporting director. And they've now got it down to a couple of candidates, and there will be more talks this week. So the amount of information that comes from Barry Ferguson, I was on the podcast the night that we sacked Clement, and the night that it became apparent that Barry was going to be our manager. And the reason it became apparent was because it was being reported in the Daily Record and Go Radio. There is with Barry, there is a level or a degree of what I would call unprofessionalism with things like that he doesn't live up to the expectation, in my opinion, of a modern day football manager that the future direction of our club will demand in terms of those standards. Barry has every other Rangers standard, right? He is a very, very capable Rangers man. But it's areas like that I don't think will ingratiate himself to our new owners. It's very clear where that's come from. It's very, very clear. Those things in the press have come from Barry himself, in my opinion, or from one of his team, right? But they're accountable to Barry. So for those reasons, I don't think we'll see him actually in a coaching role. I think he could go back to his ambassadorial role. I think he's got a few phenomenal news stories now that he can tell when he's wandering around the hospitality suites, and he can tell genuinely, sincerely about the basket case of a squad that he walked into and what he was dealing with and some of these players and how he's tried to get some standards back. And what you say there, Rob, about Dio, Barron and Raskin, he has clearly worked with those three players, and he's worked with them well, right? And Connor Barron in particular is a completely different player. Nico Raskin is our best player at the moment. We saw that again yesterday. But Connor Barron, his transformation in the last 3 months is phenomenal. And I have to believe that Barry has worked with him personally and gone, right, you're a young Scottish midfielder. I identify with you, and here's what we're going to do, and here's how you play for Rangers. So that there are some really, really good points. But I do think there are areas, in my opinion, where he's not done himself any favours long term. Let's see.
His last few press conferences, it was notable that he was starting to sound like a tabloid column, and that's what I'm saying about how there'll be a body within the support that still this proves. I'm trying not to be unkind, you know. I did fear for him when he took the job on, especially with 200 to Kilmarnock, and I was impressed by how much of a Ranger he sounded like when he's on it. Obviously is, but just the job, he became the job. And I was really happy for him that it wasn't good. And I still, every single time, are Celtic going to win the league at Ibrox? Are Celtic going to give us a doing? Are we going to, oh my God, he's got Mourinho. He's only managed Blackpool, Hearts, Celtic Hearts and Alloa Athletic, Barry. And Clyde, he's going to get absolutely scalped when he ends up beating him. So, soon as you've went there, Ross, I tell you what he's like, bro. I tell you what he's like. Soon as you've gone there, I'll have to defend what I'm saying. It's a kind of, you come in, I thought it could be an absolute disaster. I was terrified when he got the job, and I was just more terrified for Barry than I realised I would be. I was more terrified for him than I was for myself or for Rangers in general. And all the tabloid, I've not been paying attention to his articles and that, his media stuff over the years, and I've kind of ignored it. But I noticed the last few pressers, when it was getting to the point that he hadn't had a disaster in the job and had a few bonus, really memorable wins, he was starting to give it, I should be getting the job. He's kind of sounding like one of his own, Daily Record articles pushing for somebody else to get a job. And it was like, right, let's just move this on. And I think he's come in and he's held the fort admirably. And I thank him, and I thank also Griggs, Neil McCann, Billy Dodds, the other legends. It's such short notice, and to do the job that they did, I thought it was fantastic. It hasn't made things any better than they were under Clement, but certainly we didn't go backwards either. They held it together at a time, but it was like, let's just get this kind of party moved on and move on to the next generation, if you like.
Then the next chapter.
The next chapter.
and I think that echo both some of the comments that you have made there, but I think the frustrating thing for me was towards the end when we got into the split and some of the fixtures were less meaningful. I think there was a really good opportunity for us to be able to play people like Cortez, Danilo, and a few others a little bit more often, and it kind of ties into what I was going to say about the lineup for Hibs as well. That we obviously had a couple of changes with Castle Weir's coming in at left back, which was great to see him back playing football, and Danilo coming in. But the one that I just cannot get my head around is the fact that in the last two games, I think he's had a combined 19 or 20 minutes as Cortez. And we're on the hook to pay £4.5 million for this boy. We need to know, or at least get a semblance of, is he somebody we need to stick with in the summer, or somebody we need to twist and try and cut our losses in? And that was the only frustration for me with Barry, is that there seemed to be selections based on him still trying to get the job, when we kind of knew that he wasn't going to get it in the longer term sense. And I don't know, Ross, what you thought about the lineup for the Hibs game yesterday, whether you echoed some of those frustrations like me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I felt that his lineups were, he was almost as if he was more interested in. Oh no, actually, I was going to say something really unkind there, and Nick has already guilt tripped me. There were times when I worried that Barry's team selections were more looking out for himself, i.e. I need to make sure that I don't have a record of, the worst ever Rangers manager, statistically speaking. Therefore, regardless of the situation, I am going to play my strongest team. That being said, I've been on record on this show of saying I think play your strongest team, no matter what the circumstances, whatever the opponent, just play the best team you've got available to you. So I actually, a mate of mine texted me yesterday saying, why on earth will he not start Bailey Rice? Right. But actually, I don't mind it. If Barry Ferguson doesn't believe that Oscar Cortez is the future of Rangers Football Club. And by the way, there's not many people better judged than Ferguson to determine that, both in terms of the quality of the player, but the characteristics of the man as well. He's under no obligation to play him. Barry's come in to do us a favour and help us out and steer the club as best he sees fit. I actually don't mind him not playing the youngsters. Now, I understand why there would be a sort of clamour to do that, but I did worry that it was more Barry just making sure, a kind of a self-preservation thing. I need this result to go my way, because otherwise, I've got a win percentage under 50% or whatever it would have been. So, but on a personal level, I understand why he would do that. This football club means absolutely everything to him. He is a greater Ranger than any of us will ever be. So all he wants is Rangers to win every game of football. And actually, having thought about it, because that's been a topic of debate probably the last 6 or 8 weeks or so, is he's not playing the youngsters. Why wouldn't he do that? Why wouldn't he give Finlay Curtis some game time? Why wouldn't he give Danilo or Oscar Cortez some game time? He just wants Rangers to win every game. I actually don't. Genuinely, I don't mind it. That being said, I'll couple that with the fact that with the likes of Bailey Rice and Finlay Curtis, they haven't exploded onto the scene in the same way that Barry Ferguson did.
Yeah.
So, it's not crystal clear from day one that these guys are going to be the future of the Rangers midfield. So that's why I'm not too arsed about seeing them at the moment. I don't know if I suspect they'll go out on loan next season, and then we don't know what happens from there, don't we? The Rangers players going out on loan. Cortez is a difficult one. I like Cortez as a player. I thought he did well when he came on yesterday, but he was extremely rusty, wasn't he? It was he was lacking the sharpness. But I think there's definitely a player there. I'm excited to see what more he can do next season.
Yeah. Fingers crossed he stays fit.
Absolutely.
And I guess, Alex, for a change, we get a cracking start to the game. The Hibs keeper doesn't do a good job of clearance. It's kind of straight to Raskin. Great wee header into Dessers, who for all the stick that he gets, I thought it was a cracking kind of touch and clever swivel and finish. That was kind of his, was it 30th goal of the season? 29th was it? I thought he'd hit 30, but put some top of the charts in SPFL top goal scorer. Not bad for a donkey that most of their fans hate and want to get rid of.
A goal every second game. He's average, and that was an absolutely exquisite finish. And I didn't see it until the end of the game, because I made a complete arse of trying to sign on to Rangers TV. My VPN thing had expired. I got the free trial the last time. I thought still within the month, and I didn't find this out until I signed up at 12 o'clock, and it's just a nightmare. Total technophobe that I am. So I missed the first 15 minutes through my own incompetence, and then Rangers TV crashed for about 20 minutes in the second half. So I barely saw any of the game, but obviously I saw the goals eventually, and it was a beautiful finish. Raskin does fantastic. He's not only reading what's gone wrong for Hibs with the kick out for Smith, but he's, instead of just cutting the ball out, he's also instantly picking out Dessers with a header. Raskin's headers have just become a thing of beauty over the last few months, which just lets commentators keep coming out. It's the smallest man in the park. See if the ball's at mid-height, that means he's best placed to win it. This thing about the smallest man in the park wins the headers. But Dessers, I know he's plenty of space and time, and he also had, I think, Diamande and Cherny coming up to hit the ball square. They're both facing the goal, but to take it in the chest, twist, and he puts it right in that bottom corner. I think it was over the line. I can't really be sure. It seemed to kind of touch the net. We never, there's no pictures that were conclusive, but we got the goal. The biased officials gave us the goal, and it was a great start. And Big Cyril, I think, is just, as you say, he's completely maligned. We know why. It's frustrating as hell when he's missing these chances and with the ball's bouncing off him, and definitely has cost his game. But I think he's just being a striker. It's like goalkeepers. If a team's playing badly, they're in the two most extreme, easy to understand areas when things go wrong or go right of any team. And he's basically summed up Rangers. I think this season. I think the season, domestic, absolute nightmare. And even then, you've got a great record against Celtic, which is something we've struggled for in season. But European-wise, it's been absolutely glorious. And Dessers is right at the heart of that. Some of these goals, some of the locations, the venues he scored at, and the way he scored these goals, particularly away from home in Europe, it's been fantastic. But I think he sums up why we're second in both senses of the phrase. We wouldn't have somebody doing. It's like over 17 points off the top. That's because Dessers can't score the 9 chances he gets every game. If he did, he wouldn't be at Rangers. And also, we're 17 points ahead of Hibs because Dessers does put away a goal every second game on average. I think the big man is much maligned, and he's done really well in a season where the team has generally struggled.
Aye, and given you didn't see the first 15 or so minutes,
I switched on just in time.
Oh, did you? That's fine. Thanks. I was going to go to Ross first on this one, so I'll let you percolate your thinking there, mate. Sure. Just so that you can come back in and add some good thing. But I don't really want to go on a rant because I feel like every pod I do, I'm always talking about officials for some reason. I don't know why. But, Raskin breaks up field again, cracking bit of play from him, plays it to Dio, continues his run. What a pass it was from Dio to pick him out. He nicks it past the keeper and bundles it into the back of the net, or so we thought. The goal isn't given, and then Hibs break straight up the pitch and stick the ball in the back of the net to equalise. So in the space of a minute or so, we've kind of gone from thinking we've taken a 2-0 lead to drawing one each, with nobody knowing what the hell's going on. What was your take on what was happening, Ross, watching this live?
Well, firstly, I celebrated a goal, right? Because it was so clear from watching the footage that just by the laws of physics, by the virtue of the fact that the ball kind of bounces off the inside of the post and goes further that way, it was a goal. It was over the line. So I sort of celebrated the goal, and then the goalkeeper holds the ball for a bit. And I kind of wonder, first of all, my instant thought was they're going to check this for a foul, right? They're going to check that Raskin, has he pushed the defender, and that'll be a foul. And then they didn't. So then it was that Hibs kind of started playing again, and I thought, that's not right. Something's not right here. That was a goal. That was definitely a goal. And then they went up the park and scored a very, very easy goal. And I'll be very generous here because I wasn't very generous about Barry Ferguson. I'll be generous to our players and say that they were clearly confused by the fact that we hadn't been awarded a goal and therefore completely switched off. Didn't track the runner into the box. They score a very, very easy goal. Their boy doesn't celebrate. He kind of goes and picks up the ball and looks around sheepishly. And at that point, I go, right, well, now they'll have to check this. And obviously, we know what's going on here, and we don't have goal line technology in the same way. And that's one thing I missed, is that I thought, why is that not buzzing on his wrist? The goal line technology. It wasn't even a question of me going, the goal line technology is clearly saying that's not a goal. I was thinking the goal line technology must have broken. Right, it's not working. They've not switched it on. Now I've come to realise and remember that we don't have goal line technology in Scotland because naturally, why would we have something that England implemented in about 2014? But that's by the by. So then Hibs sort of pick up the ball and they've scored and they're looking around and not really celebrating. It's all a bit sheepish. And I'm thinking at that point, VAR will come back and look at this. They will have to come back and look at this. And for it to the decision to be that there's no conclusive evidence that the ball crossed the line. Well, firstly, I think that's a bit of a sham because the ball crossed the line. You can see that from every picture, every video. Everyone knows it, right? So we can kind of, anyone online or other fan bases claiming, from what angle, you can't really tell that the ball's over the line. Nonsense. The ball was over the line and you can all see it. So then it comes to this thing, there's no conclusive evidence, i.e. we don't have the goal line technology, we don't have the camera in line. But I would ask the VAR, I would ask Mick Walsh, I would ask whoever, the SFA, whoever's got to make that decision and then justify that decision to not award the goal. In the absence of conclusive evidence, how sure would you have to be that the ball was over the line to award the goal there? Would you say 80%, 85%. You look at that and go, I'm 85% sure. Okay, I don't have a conclusive angle, but I'm 85% sure that the ball's over the line and I'll give a goal. I look at that picture and I say I'm 99, 98 to 99% sure that it would have to be a freak optical illusion for that ball to not be over the line. So I'd say I'm 98 to 99% sure that the ball crossed the line there. Why is that not enough to go? Why is it that anyone looking at that will go, I'm 98 to 99% sure that ball's over the line, but I'm going to stick with the 1% decision. I'm going to stick with the decision, even though I'm only 1% sure it's correct. I find that absolutely staggering that there's no common sense here to just look at it and go, we've made a bit of an arse of it. It's clearly over the line. Let's do the common decent thing and award the goal. So, I'm sure we'll talk about bias or corruption or incompetence and where do we go from here and what happens to the officials. I just don't understand how they can look at it and go, well, we do believe that the ball's over the line, but we don't have a camera at the right angle to show that, so we're going to have to stick with the wrong decision. And we know it's the wrong decision, but we're going to stick with it anyway. I find it staggering.
Yeah, and I think the thing for me is when you see some of the pictures back as well, the assistant's position is actually fairly decent. He's looking along that line. So how if he can't spot that ball's over the line, he shouldn't be being an official in a Grade 1 game ever again, because that's his sole job, is to look along and make sure that he gets those calls right. Walsh isn't that far away from play, and he's got a fairly unobstructed view of what's happening. But then you've got that fallback of VAR, and for them to do what they did again, which is brief media around the decision process and how there wasn't conclusive angles. It just beggars belief, because there's no other games where they brief that quickly to press.
No, that's the thing. The BBC's live blog was updated sort of 10 minutes later, and they've come out and got, and we, let's be fair, we will get an apology out of this and go, oh, well, we'll look to learn from this and we'll look to do better. I think it's one of those situations, and we see it a lot in Scotland. I think it's one of those situations where the officials have not given a decision because they want VAR to do it for them. And I wonder if Nick Walsh has had a bit of a moment and not realised that VAR wouldn't be able to conclusively rule on this. So he's decided to do the safe thing, not give a decision. We've seen it. There was one, I think it was at St Johnstone last season, where we had Matthew McDermott as the referee. It was the most blatant penalty you'll ever see, and he didn't give it. And it was clear that he was waiting for VAR to do it. And so there is this tendency for officials to not give a decision and wait for VAR to give it for them. And I wonder if Nick Walsh perhaps in the moment didn't realise that VAR wouldn't be able to give this for him. So he's, this is where you start to stray into the bias and the conspiracy element of it. I won't give the decision in favour of Rangers. I'll wait until VAR says I have to. Maybe that's where we are.
Yeah. And Alex, I guess this isn't going to be the first pod, and I think we might have actually been on a pod before where I've probably went off on one about Nick Walsh specifically, in his refereeing. But the fact that he and the same VAR team, as I'm led to believe, were involved in that ridiculous decision to award a penalty against Dundee in Ross County midweek, from an accountability standpoint, there is nothing there that when referees and VAR teams get decisions wrong, there's no punishment. So therefore, there's no incentive for them to actually look at improving themselves, because they know they're going to get a game the following week. And, he shouldn't have even been refereeing this game based on that mistake, because you should have said, next game you've got to go down a league, and be punished for that type of decision. So without that kind of outcome, how else can we get officials to take it upon themselves to try and be better without relying on technology and stuff like that?
I hate to be that guy, but I think the accountability is there. I think it's Alan Muir getting sacked for a ball going over the line at Easter Road in a game involving the Old Firm, and Alan Muir, who also gave a decision that really benefited Celtic and hurt us in the League Cup final, he gets sacked as a result of agreed to leave kind of mutual decision that I think if the officials yesterday, and I love how Ross was describing it, that sinking feeling you get, that's spot on. I got seconds. You're watching it going, right, we've scored that. No, surely just because it hasn't touched the ground and it has been, and well done, Rocky Bashiri, for coming out giving it. Yeah, I cleared that. Just keep pushing, always fight right to the end. Guy was a great example to all young pros, and it's like, as Ross said, you're watching the ball kind of right. The goalie's picked the ball up, right. It's got to happen. We're not getting this, are we? We're not getting this. And it was also when Hibs started breaking on us, I thought they're going to have to score just to complete this, and they did. And it's like that's going to get allowed. That's going to be one each, And then at the second feeling I got was when you're watching the footage back and Bomber. I never want to disagree with Bomber. Just superb. It's corruption. Well, and Tom commentator, well, I don't think we can say that, Bomber. Oh, I'm saying it. Right, yeah, I'll this. Now, would you be arguing with the Maya? But for the safety of my own, my secret address here in somewhere in Venezuela, I've got to decide. I don't think it's corruption. I saw what was happening. I got that second sinking feeling. This is because they get done. The officials got hauled over the coals, and I think Alan Muir ends up getting sacked as a kind of direct or indirect result of the decision in February where Celtic go to Easter Road and are denied a point that it was supposed to be an equaliser. They scored because it's a goal line, but at the byline we would call it, where the big Canadian fullback that we all hate that plays for Celtic, Alistair Johnson, he pulls the ball back. He pulls the ball back to Maeda to put in the back of the net, but it's just as it's going over the line. And it's right. It's one of those instances. It's exactly the same. Amazingly, Maeda's involved in both games. Japan against Spain in the World Cup, the most famous incident of a ball looking like it is over the line to the naked eye, and it being proven because it just so happened the PA, so the Associated Press cameraman was in the gantry at the Spain end, where all the other cameramen were up at the gantry at the Japan end, expecting the goals to be done there. He got the cracking photograph of the millimetre of the ball that is over the line. It's always the bit, in these occasions, it's the circumference of the ball, the kind of outer bit that's not actually on the grass, and it's just in line, breaking the plane, if you like, of the white line. That, and I remember, for example, the goal we scored against Brøndby at Ibrox. It was Kamal Roof, and we thought he was just putting the ball in the back of the net as a formality. I thought at the whole stadium, every Rangers supporter thought it was offside. Ali McCoist and the co-coms thought it was offside. Why are we even bothering to check this? They drew the lines. It was well onside. There is that kind of optical illusion stuff. I'm 100% sure that ball was over the line yesterday. It was a goal, but I know why they haven't given it, because the officials get utterly destroyed. I don't know why. Sorry, that was my instant opinion. That's what I went to. That is why they haven't given this, because they get destroyed because we don't have the goal line technology, and it did go to VAR. And VAR, the Celtic game against Hibs a few months ago, they intervened and said that ball was actually out. That ball was over the line. Which is what they're technically having to say for us yesterday. I thought, well, the last time we said that on the strength of what we can see, guys get sacked. The VAR official gets sacked. We're going to have to. There might be bitterness there, and it's not. And what the officials are doing, it's making them do that yesterday. That's no right either. They're not refereeing properly if that's what's motivating them. I'm not going to say I have sympathy, but I definitely understand it. And there's no, as somebody was saying on Twitter, I think Frankie retweeted it, totally nailed it. You draw the lines for offside all the time, right? Despite the cameras not being, completely in line with every offside decision. Why not just say, right, we're checking Nico Raskin for offside. Oh, look, there's a big white line right in front of him. It's the goal line and the ball is on the other side. You know what I mean? The ball is offside, if you like. It is in the back of the net. Goal line technology, goal net technology. You saw where the ball, Rocky Bashiri's got the ball in between his feet as he's on his arse in the back of the net, and the ball touches the side of the net. You can see the exact point. Just never mind drawing the lines via the computer. Just get a 30mm ruler, old school, go down to the net and check the net. The squares of the net. And there's about 5 squares of the net. If it's more than the diameter of the ball, it's a goal. It's clearly gone over the line, but I know why. It's now been established that the naked eye is unreliable when it comes to that balls crossing the line. And yet, as people will say, the naked eye seems to be completely reliable when it comes to having to, decide who's fouled who's got to the ball first, and every other aspect of refereeing. But I think it's the protocols. The protocols kind of getting in the way yesterday. Rather than we actually need more technology. You need the goal line technology, as Ross is saying. I think was it Villa Park or something? There was definitely an incident down south where the goal line technology had broken, as Ross was talking about. We thought that's what happened yesterday, and the referee just looked at the footage and went, "Aye, that's a goal," and gave it. And it's like, if the ball had hit the back of the net and bounced, if it'd been the Dell, Southampton's old ground, and the ball had hit the back of the net and bounced back out, do you know what I mean? There used to be goal nets that didn't have the depth of how far that ball was over the line yesterday. It's really interesting. But it was just as well. There was nothing major to play for yesterday. Although a Rangers win is always pretty major to me. And instead of going 2-0 up, it's one each. But I hate to. It shouldn't be. I shouldn't have to hate to say it. It shouldn't be a case of, if you're no hating the referee who didn't give Rangers a goal, then you're no proper Rangers supporter. I think that's a bad. I think a lot of people out there feel that way. If you're not as upset as me about this, I was, but I just also think I don't want to become like that mob across the city. Just basically attacking the game all the time. But this was Rangers have to ask questions about this one. They do have to ask questions. You inquire about it and just push it to the point where we get, surely goal line technology can't be that expensive, to get it confirmed. But I have to say, I know it's not what folk want, but I do understand why they didn't give it, and it's due to an underlying fault in the game just now.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen, you could probably get it installed at every ground for about 400, 500k, and then it costs potentially every game as well. If only we had a kind of high-paid executive that doesn't really add a lot of value to the Scottish football game, taking about £500,000 a year, we could probably reinvest that salary into the game and get goal line technology instead of the VAR light.
What were the guys UEFA? They spare referees, they spare linesmen UEFA used to have behind the goals. They're all out of job. Just get them to stand, at the corner flag and just watch that. Okay.
Don't be giving the SFA any ideas, mate. Otherwise, that's probably what we'll end up with next year. I guess, Ross, the point is that we could probably invest as much money as we want in technology, but until the standard of refereeing and officiating up here is better, it's still going to be the same people that are behind that technology. So it's looking at how we can improve it. And yeah, I'm going to be disappointed when Rangers don't get decisions, absolutely. But equally, you look at that one on Wednesday night that potentially could have relegated Dundee. There's big implications in some of these decisions with these referees.
We need to have all full-time refs, mate.
Yeah, and I think that's the frustration that I've had since doing the pod. For the last couple of years, is that there always seems to be every single week an example across Scottish football of decisions continually getting wrong. Technology was brought in to help them, but it seems to have made them even worse.
Absolutely, and it's a case that it damages the fabric of the game, right? Because if I'm a paying fan, I pay for my season ticket, I pay for if I get an away game, I pay for that ticket, I pay for my Rangers TV, hell, flight over to Turkey yesterday to watch the game, and as a fan, you're being shortchanged because the integrity of the game is gone. Rangers were 2-0 up yesterday in sort of 20 minutes or whatever it was. Rangers were 2-0 up. But they weren't because of bad decision making, bad performance. They are not performing to the standard requirement. And you're absolutely right. Let's take this away from the old firm. That Dundee decision was abysmal, and that was checked by VAR, and it was VAR that gave that. The Kemar Roof one that Eck referred to, I remember that really, really vividly. And I worked with a guy who was he's a massive Bromby fan. I worked with this guy at the time. He was in the Bromby youth system, but Bromby season ticket holder. He'd fly from London back to Copenhagen every other week to go to the games. And we had a conversation, because I couldn't disagree with him, actually, that Kemar Roof was offside. By the spirit of that law, he was ahead of the other guy. His whole body was apart from the other guy's foot, right, standing leg, but he was kind of leaning. So to all intents and purposes, Kemar Roof was closer to the... So it's that kind of thing of the VAR is making these decisions that by the letter of the law, as it's written on the page, are correct. And we talk about it all the time with handball. But it's not improving the game. and it's actually shortchanging the fans. So whether it's VAR making silly decisions, or whether it's referees who are completely incompetent, assistant referees who cannot see a ball crossing a line when everyone else can, it means that as fans we are shortchanged, and that the beauty of sport, whether it's football or anything else, the beauty of sport is that it's guys going out there to compete against each other, and that's it. It's very pure, it's very simple, it's very basic. We've got a game. These are the rules. Play within that rule set, those parameters. The best team wins. But when that's being compromised by shoddy decision making from the people who are supposed to be upholding the rules of the game, upholding those parameters to make sure that the game is played within those parameters, it makes a mockery of the sport, and it completely cheapens it, and it removes any integrity, because there's just this kind of wild card factor now. You can be the better team, but the guy in the middle with the whistle might have a brain fart, right? And he might just miss something. And that would be a shame, but that's part of the game now in Scotland. Is you could score a perfectly good goal, but we might not see it. So, oh wow, a wee bit of extra jeopardy there for you. It completely damages the fabric of the game.
I feel as if it's. You can say the same thing about Cyril Dessers not scoring the 4 goals he should have scored at Dens Park that night. He's shortchanging as the money argument and how much you put into it. I don't want. I'm sorry to do this. I know I'm being a bit of a tosser here, but it's that which is part of the course. I feel as if I like VAR because it is showing fans that the whole thing where the laws have no spirit, as far as I'm sorry, but laws don't have a spirit. That's the whole point. Rules are pedantic. They are boring. They are just, and they need to be. The beauty of any sport can't exist without the rules and without the people to officiate. I think the referees yesterday have actually done it within the parameters that they've been given, because they know the ball's over the line, I would say, but it's provability, because people have been sacked. Their colleagues have been sacked for not being able to for saying a ball was over the line at the very same stadium, in the very same competition, and then the guy ends up losing his job.
If they believe that ball is over the line, blow the whistle and give the goal. I believe it's over the line, but I'm not going to give a goal.
We all believe that the ball was out in the Japan-Spain game. We all believe that Kamar Roof was offside. And by the thing with offside, I hear this a lot. It was, can you be offside by a toenail? Well, the thing is, be offside, it has to start somewhere. If you could measure it to a microbe of nail fungus, if that's all you're offside by, you're offside, because it has to start something. I only say this, it only means so much to me, I think, because for decades, the club across the city, and my enemy's enemy is my friend, they are the loudest. They were wailing about VAR before it came in, because they suddenly realised if the analysis of the rules of the game, the application of the laws of the game gets more forensic, they are not going to be able to win games by shouting the loudest. It's going to get proven whether they're right or wrong. VAR is not perfect in any way, but I feel as if we've got to keep going with it, and I think fans are going to have to realise that the rule. You tend to find we're getting really upset about this. I didn't see the Dundee game the other night, but when you watch other games in Scotland, you see that it's no bias, it's no corruption, it is incompetence. Some of the decision making is just, it's horrific for everybody, and we don't get any refereeing European finals or we don't get any big representation from our officials at World Cups and that. So there is a problem with the quality in Scotland. I'm no doubting that for a second, the quality of officiating. But I feel as if the rules are so pedantic, and we can't really cope with that. It's a bit of, I don't want to see people just kind of greeting about stuff that they can't control. I'm raging when Rangers don't get a decision. I instantly think it's biased, and it's the referee's bent and what have you. But in the cold light of day, we don't have a sport without it. And these guys aren't going to spend that amount of time, training up to become referees. And it's in the public eye. It's a humiliation for them if they're seen to have given a really bad decision. They get publicly humiliated. They've got no friends as it is, but the games don't go ahead without them. I just don't want to become that mob across the city who destroy the game if they don't win it.
Yeah. I don't think we're looking to destroy it. I think for me, like you, it's more looking at how we can improve the offering on the pitch, because ultimately it is impacting a lot of games now. when you look at it, and fair enough, we're in a position now where it didn't really matter whether we got 3 points at Easter Road or not. But it could have,
it matters. I'm not saying it has to be examined. You can't get away with this, but it's an ongoing process.
It's the continue. I mean, I don't know how many decisions certain referees have got wrong over the course of a season, and I think the one that got sacked is probably the one that's just been the sacrificial lamb, because it was a couple of high profile mistakes, and it was probably easy to cut them loose and.
Can you say that?
But
that's what I'm talking about. Like we get this across the city where it's like, Rangers have get a couple of dodgy decisions went against Rangers. That's just to make sure that we don't the conspiracy isn't too obvious. That's a conspiracy that comes across there as well. So we don't want. I think you've got to take it at its words. You've got to. I don't think. Getting sacked, and even if you don't get sacked, as I say, the fact it's on television, they have a monthly program on Sky or whatever it is, where they go through all the decisions they got wrong. You play back the audio. We only hate, what do you call them, because we heard how he was talking about Diamandi. I'm pitting him off. They're pretty transparent, I feel, but it's just the quality. It's just the general quality, and I'm not saying for a second that we're trying to destroy the game. I don't want to become. Go down to start down that track. That's me pointing across the city. It's over there. Just
don't give too much your location away, Alex.
I know. Especially after this part. We're Rangers fans after me.
I think enough talking about referees and officials. We kind of get to half time, and again, bit of a fast start. We take the lead again 5 minutes into the second half, and the tallest man on the pitch, Nico Raskin, gets on at the end of a wicked ball in from Tav for another goal. And I think under Barry, Raskin's, played 14, scored 4 goals and assisted 7 in that time. That's his best run of form, I think, since he joined us. What's been your view of his appointment under Barry, his improvement under Barry, Alex?
Fantastic. It's been great to watch. I think we started playing really well at a time when the league's kind of over. The minute Barry came in, obviously we're at the Scottish Cup and the league's over. But that's maybe an accusation that is levelled at them by some folk, by some Rangers supporters. But he's definitely. I thought even against Spurs. I remember against Spurs under Clement, was that December at Ibrox. I thought it was fantastic that night, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's it. You're fantastic against an EPL club. You're going. You're away. 30 million will take that. I'm fine. I'll call it 40. But he's been great. He's been a joy to watch. He's lacked consistency through his Rangers career, but that's him starting to rack up. Well, Balmer had him as, I think it was 3-4 man of the match awards on the bounce, just as Dessers is scoring a goal. He never scored in 3 successive games, league games, Dessers in his career. Then he scored in every one of our post-split fixtures, which started about half an hour after Celtic had officially won the league. But he's got the goals banged in there anyway. I think he's done really well, Nico Raskin. He's a cracking player, and I just hope we can kind of hang on to him.
Yeah, and I think, Ross, it gives us a bit of a quandary come summer, doesn't it? Because there was obviously the embargoed interview that I think came out today to say, he's happy to stay here as long as Rangers want him, whether that's in the context of the current 2-year contract he's currently got, or whether he's up for extending it. And I guess that's the big decision that the new owners and new management team are going to have as soon as they step through the door. Because I think, my own personal opinion, if he's not going to sign an extension, we need to try and sell him this summer. And I think the important thing with that for me is making sure that we've identified a suitable replacement, because that's always been the thing that's undone us. But I don't know what your view would be. Would you be taking a chance of getting rid of him if he doesn't extend, or should we keep a hold of him for another season just to get the best out of him and let him go for a cut price fee next year?
Yeah, I mean, what we need in this situation is the one thing in football that's rarer than a decent Scottish referee, and that is an honest agent. We need an honest agent here. We need his agent to be very transparent about what Nico Raskin wants. Because if Nico Raskin could be the future of this Rangers team for the next 10 years, quite comfortably. He's one hell of a player. He's playing internationally for Belgium. a very, very good international side. He doesn't look out of place at that level. He doesn't look out of place in Europe, and he does look out of place in Scotland just because of his talent. So he could be a proper, genuine Rangers legend. Captain, he's pure captain material as well.
Absolutely.
See that again yesterday after the ghost goal, let's call it. You've seen it again when was it Casemiro kind of. It looked like he jumped into a heavy tackle, and it was Raskin that was there with the referee trying to defuse it. Yeah. So proper player, proper captain, proper leader, proper talent. The irony of me saying proper there, and we're going to definitely talk about Robin proper later on. However, this is what I mean when I say his agent needs to be honest with us. If Nico doesn't want to be here, if Nico sees his future elsewhere, this is the summer to maximise, because even if it goes to January, I know that January you tend to get inflated prices anyway, just because it's a different type of market. But we don't tend to have a good track record of getting inflated prices for anyone, quite frankly. So the reason I would be busting a gut, really busting a gut to get this guy tied down to a new contract this summer. Firstly, what a boost that'll be for the support. A new regime, new manager, new owners. And look what they've done. They've got the best asset tied down for another 4 years, whatever it might be, presumably on very, very good wages. I think it would be a huge lift to all of us. But secondly, we already need like 10 players this summer. And 10's possibly conservative, the number of players that we could be doing with this summer. So we do need some consistency and some continuity. We spoke last time I was on this show, we spoke about this in the context of John Souttar. Do you give him a new contract or do you let him walk away? And my feeling on that is that you try and give him a new contract in the knowledge that in 2 years' time he won't be a starting player. We will have progressed and we should have better. But we need some consistency next season, because there's going to be a hell of a turnover already. So I would be doing everything I can to get Nico Raskin tied down this summer, because we need the consistency. We need some. We can, if we do sell him, we go from needing 10 to needing 11 or needing 12 because he's that good that he's represents 2. So. Yeah, he's a great player. He's come on leaps and bounds this season. Rightly Player of the Year. Delighted to see him getting his international appearances and getting goals. And there's so much that he seems to have developed on. His pace has come on. I thought that yesterday with the phantom goal. The ball comes through, he outpaces the defender and runs around him. So
I think he's taken a lot of personal responsibility for that side as well, because I think it was earlier in the season he spoke about having to change his diet and starting to look after himself a little bit better. So you can see that he's maturing as an individual. Like you say, he's broken out the Belgian team playing here. That would typically be the thing that would make players move, is that they don't see a pathway to international, but he's getting game time there. And I think as long as we still get European football at Rangers, he's always got a good chance to put himself in that shot window. I'd love to get him extended, but I think if we can, we've got to get better at picking the right moments to sell these players, so that we can get a decent fee. Yeah, and it was a good segue mentioning proper, Ross. So I do appreciate that, because Hibs get the equaliser in 15 minutes. 15 minutes later, ball's whipped in to the right. Butland kind of looks as if he gets caught in no man's land. He kind of starts to come for it and then stops, and looking at it, Proper's kind of let Boyle run off the back of him for a free header. I think he started the last couple of games, Butland, and Alex, I know how much you love him, so I'll probably come to you for a quick comment on this, mate, before we go to Ross. But do you think Butland specifically has done enough in those last 2 games to convince the Rangers fan base that he's going to be the number one and the keeper to save us next year?
No pun intended. He didn't do any harm the other night against the United. A couple of good saves against them, but I forgive all of Jack Bottom when he actually started, properly melting down. I felt bad. I did feel bad. It's because I'm surrounded by people and other things that I do that I've got that kind of, rugby club mentality that he's looking at events. But he's a cracking, lovely guy. No harm to Jack Butland. I felt really sorry for him when it started to kind of properly go poorly for him. He gets dropped, and he's dealt with that really well. The night against Fenerbahce, he's one of my favourites of my life, and he dominated that penalty shootout at Ibrox as much as the Copeland Road stand did. It was just a moment of one player united with the support, kind of keeping the goals. It was tremendous. But I that was a multifaceted kind of shambles from our point of view yesterday. Did Tav no shot the guy doing quick enough? Did Barron no shot the guy quick to get the Cadden to get the cross? And it was a tremendous cross, but we know he's capable of that. We shouldn't let him get it. I think John Suter probably evades blame, and he turned when he was bollocking up the park back towards the kind of Hibs East stand. So Casson, Weirjo, Butland, and Proper were all in his direction. I'm thinking it's going to be proper, and it is going to be proper. I think Big Robin, since he scored for Motherwell in his debut, hasn't he been the best of 1.5 million buys? Oh, he does really well. He does great against Celtic, scores against Celtic, does good in European games as well. He's just a kind of European style player, doesn't like these games. But it was a poor goal for us to lose. I think Proper probably takes most of the blame for it. But I think the questions of next season, that's I kind of like into the whole the Raskin stuff. Anybody, it's difficult because I just don't know what the level of the takeover is going to be and what the strategy is going to be. That's why when we're talking about trying to bleed players for next season, I was like, as Ross is saying, our kind of need to see Rangers winning every game coincided with Barry's need to want to have Rangers win every game during his interimship. But also because I thought, I almost was feeling, what's the point of trying out young players for next season when we don't know if anybody is going to be there, and we don't know what kind of they're bringing players in just now, so there's some sort of kind of through strategy. But I don't know. I can't see Jack Butland remaining at Rangers. I think it's kind of going a bit pear-shaped for him. But I don't know who is going to remain at Rangers, Rob.
Well, I think that's going to be a question that will answer itself over the next few weeks.
That was quite dramatic, wasn't it? I don't know who's going to be at Rangers, Rob. I just left that hanging there.
That was a good segue. It's a good segment in the summer recruitment, mate, because it's probably easier to talk about players that potentially are going to be coming in than who we're going to get rid of. Because I can't remember if it was actually in the pod or it was just discussions on the supporters bus that I've had. But when we're looking at new recruits, we're probably looking that we really need to get at least about 8 players through the door. When you consider a couple of centre halves, maybe a keeper, right back, left back, another midfielder, maybe a couple of wingers and a striker. And it is almost a kind of a full look about it. The one boy that is going to be coming in, Cameron Lyle. I think 22, still fairly young, but he's got good experience in the SPFL, playing for Dundee 41 times, getting 13 goals and 11 assists. And I think 4 of those goals have actually came post-split this year. And a struggling Dundee team, that's not a bad return, is it, Ross? And do you think he could force himself to become a starter, or is this somebody that we're going to be looking to develop a little bit before we put him in that category?
Well, first thing is you called him Cameron Lyle there, and I panicked and Googled him, thinking I've been calling him Lyle Cameron my whole life. But I think
is it? His middle name's Comma.
But good player. He's one of those. I'll admit, every time we sign a player from a Scottish club, and this is my ignorance. It happened with Scott Wright. It happened with Connor Barron. Every time we sign a player from a Scottish club, I go, "Nice, we must have played against him 10 times in the last 18 months, and I've got no idea who this boy is." And then I'll go online and I'll see loads of people going, "Oh, I remember him when we played against Dundee. He was a standout. We pumped them 6-0, but he looks really good." I never remember these guys. As I say, that's my ignorance. That being said, I have looked now to see what this guy's doing, and he's a goal-scoring midfielder. And that's, we have been over-reliant in the last 5 or 6 years on our strikers. We were over-reliant on Alfredo Morelos, and when his goals dried up, which they did once or twice, we struggled. This season, I would argue we were over-reliant on Dessers and Egaman with a sprinkling of Czerny in there. But players like Bayrami simply do not score enough goals for us. Nico Raskin, I am pleased to see, is kind of turning that around. But Dio doesn't score enough goals. He scores a few, but not enough. Connor Barron doesn't score any, as far as I can recall.
Yeah.
So actually, a goal-scoring midfielder for us is a good thing. And then you kind of get, let's call them the ancillary benefits, the wee extra bits. He's Scottish. It's good for the coefficient. He understands the league. he knows, he's played for Dundee, he's been on loan at Peterhead and Montrose, so he knows the nuts and bolts of Scottish football. He knows these places we're going to go. He's not expecting glamour like someone coming from Brazil might. Definite, clear, he's 22 years old, clear future Scottish internationalist, 12 caps on the under-21 side. And as you say, going from strength to strength. So I think it's a really positive thing. Again, I am, and I don't know if we'll talk about managers tonight, but I am proper woke football hipster XG merchant, right? So I get all excited and dazzled by the international names. I was thrilled when Jeff Day was coming in. I was thrilled when Danilo was coming in. I even loved it when Hamza was coming in because it was something different and exotic. And wow, look at that! So I'm fully aboard the Davide Ancelotti train because it's exciting and it's cool. So I am really, really snobby when it comes to these guys signing from Scotland, and I'll admit that. But I do accept the old cliche that our most successful teams have been built around a Scottish core, and I think we have to acknowledge that. So, who was at Walter? That was always his tactic. It was the same with McLeish, hoover up the best Scottish talent. We've seen Celtic doing that. The young lad McCowan is a decent player. So and we've missed out on opportunities in the past because we've been snobby. We could have got Lewis Ferguson. We probably could have got Hickey at one stage. I've forgotten the Josh Doig, the young left back that was at Hibs. We could have got these boys. Andy Robertson we could have got for Queen's Park, and we've been snobby, and we need to stop that. So I bring it on.
We probably will get to talk about managers in a wee second, but given he watches a lot of football, I'm hoping that you've got extensive knowledge of the under-19s league in France, Alex, because we've obviously been linked now with the captain of that PSG team, Umar Kamara. Hopefully I've got that name right and not messed it up like I did Lyle Cameron's tonight. He's played 19 times this year, scored 7, 4 assists. Saw that he's been linked, but does this fit with the model you think of identifying rough diamonds across Europe and taking a bit of a punt on them, Alex? And is that the type of player that we should be looking at, along with some of the more kind of Scottish domestic-based talent, as well as trying to get a couple of experienced heads in there to bring them along that development journey?
Yeah, it's actually 5 assists. The own goal that Lorient scored in the Reserve Cup game that he played against them, it was his ball into the box, so he didn't get the assist. But as far as I'm concerned, that's it. The thing is, mate, I don't know what kind of play. I just feel as if we should be looking at good players. It sounds lovely. This is exactly what I'm the same as Ross. This seems like a continental model we're moving into, and I think is he Mauritanian? I think I saw that somewhere. He's actually from Mauritania, which is quite special. I might just be making that up, but this is the whole thing about not knowing what's going to happen. It's not the whole kind of infrastructure of the club has been. I'm just glad we've got an infrastructure. We've been through with 3 chairmen, 2 managers. We had to get a CEO to come in and appoint the 3rd chairman of the season. It's just, I'm glad we're getting everything built up behind the clubs. I think that's been the main problem. It's just, I think I'm not going to do this every time I want to go back to 2012 and blah, blah, blah. I don't blame anybody. As long as it's guys that get Rangers at their heart and they're trying their best for them, I think they've been working against the undertow of 2012 ever since then. And we're finally getting to that point where we've made ourselves apt for a takeover. You still get into the unknown. It still could go a bit pear-shaped in that. But as takeovers go, we know about as much as these guys about these guys as you can hope to. And it all looks good. But I don't know, the youth system. I don't know how much that contributes to the first team. The priority is getting the first team up to scratch. This guy sounds like he's got a lovely CV. In his teens, he wants to come to Rangers to get a chance of regular Champions League football because he can't get into the team that's in the Champions League final this season. It's got to be a great setup at PSG. He's got to have been well schooled. The money they're throwing at that, the standards that they'll have over there. So I don't know. I really don't know how to comment on the whole setup. I just want good players. I want us to get the best kind of players. And I just want the first team sorted, and I don't even remember the question. Sorry, mate. It's like, do you know what it's like? I'm absolutely frazzled with the whole season. I loved Europe. See if Europe had been a disaster as well. That would have made it easier. And yesterday, like Ross, like you're saying, it was like, oh, thank God that's done. Just give us 24. No, Barry's had to go within 24 hours. There's that as well, and it's just what's happening? Who's sacking them? Who's signing these players? I just hope we get the whole infrastructure sorted out, and that we're getting just a good scouting system out there. Get another Iggerman. You know, he's no perfect, but my God, he's got potential. Right. He's getting too old to just the potential, but if it's the same if he's the same kind of standard as that, then we could end up doing something really special. This fellow the camera.
Absolutely, mate. I mean, I think the only thing is we've got to be patient with some players as well. I mean, I don't know if you've watched the documentary about Iggerman, Cortez, and Yefty learning the language and stuff like that. And I think that's some of the things that we as fans probably don't take into consideration when a young player comes to a new country. They're trying to settle into a club. They've got to learn the language. There's a whole host of things that potentially can impact them. So it does take them probably a little bit longer to settle. And I think we saw shoots of brilliance from Yefty early on around how attacking he was going past a player. You know, he kind of scaled off a little bit that you're going to get with a younger player anyway. So hopefully once he gets the summer out of the way and comes back into next season, we might start to see the best of him. But a lot of these players, especially if they're going to be young, coming from a different country, aren't necessarily going to hit the ground running, and we've got to have the patience with them to give them that time to develop. And you know, as a fan base, sometimes we're not the most easiest.
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. There's so much to go through when these guys arrive to predict whether they're going to be any good or not. And you're absolutely spot on. I thought why are we spending 1.5 million in this guy? 1.7 million on Iggerman, 22 years old, but he looks like he can change game. He looks like he's a more disciplined Alfredo at times. He's just got that kind of X factor, the bouncy kind of leading of the line. Looks like he can do anything at times. Goes a bit quiet at other times, but it's a completely different culture. They come from North Africa as well. So he's coming from Europe as far as he's concerned. So I'm absolutely spot on. Totally echo that.
And given you said you were the hipster XG loving member of the pod, Ross, I'll come to you first on this one, mate. I think obviously from a management standpoint, the main noise has been around Davide Ancelotti. I think with conflicting rumours now on whether he's going to be staying on with Brazil and his dad. Obviously, Chris Jack has now come out to say no, he's still going to take his step out on his own. But the other one that I saw mentioned today, whether there's any truth in it or not, Will Still rejected an approach from us as well. You know, given the profile of both of these managers, young, fresh ideas in the game, are our support ready for that type of appointment, or do you think there's going to be a mini meltdown over it before pre-season even starts if we get something like that?
We'll melt down over anything, right? We will melt down over anything. Don't worry about that. Are we ready for a guy like that? We might have to be. You know, maybe that's the direction that the Americans want to take us in. And you know, but I guess on the football front, it'll be Thirlwell kind of driving those decisions. If that's the direction he wants to go in, then we'll have to be. And you know, I found the article, it was the French article in L'Equipe about Will Still. That was interesting. You know, that he's rejected us. I would be surprised if that's like we made him an offer and he said no. I would suspect that's more of a case of, you know, he's turned down the opportunity to have a conversation about it. You know, and I understand there's personal things, and listen to me, I understand. Apparently, there's things in his such a wanker. Apparently, there's things in his personal life that are, you know, driving him back to England to be with his partner, and so, you know, whilst I'm sure there are lots of people that take great glee in Will Still rejected Rangers, I'm not sure it's necessarily in those terms. But it does suggest that we're going down a tactician, a coach, not necessarily a figurehead manager. That's not to say that someone like Will Still or Davide Ancelotti couldn't be a figurehead and a leader, you know? And I think more than anything else, I'm not going to pretend I'd be disappointed with Steven Gerrard. We had some phenomenal memories under Steven Gerrard in 2020 in particular.
Oh, he put the building blocks into researching European
Absolutely.
football. You know, I think
Yeah.
you look at what he came in and did for us from a European standpoint from day one. It just completely transformed how we approach European football.
Absolutely. Which we've definitely regressed in certain ways, not necessarily in Europe, but in other ways. So I would not be disappointed in him coming in at all. You know, in a lot of ways, it makes a lot of sense. It would be a great thing because he just brought some pride and standards and professionalism back to the club, which I think we've missed. I think more important than anything else, in my opinion, what we need is a manager or a coach, a head coach, a leader, a gaffer, a guy that guarantees the respect of the players. Because I believe, unfortunately, that Gio, Beale, and Clement were all undermined by players that, in some ways, down tools, or in some ways, forced him out. In my opinion, the players that didn't respect him, that were not listening, not willing to implement the ideas, and I believe in sometimes not giving their all in order to get rid of the manager. I think I don't have a great deal of evidence to suggest that, to back that up, but that's how it felt to me watching from the outside. We had players that were not living up to their expectations and their potential. So we need a manager that commands the respect of the players, and Steven Gerrard did that. Steven Gerrard absolutely did that. And so whoever else it is that comes in, that's the first thing I would like to see, is that they can do that as well. I must admit, though, there is something extremely sexy about an Italian guy that speaks 5 languages. He's still in his 30s. He's coached at the biggest clubs in the world. I'm sure he'd look damn good in a suit. I think he's got a wife and kids, so he's not going to be out shagging all around Glasgow. There's a lot of boxes being ticked there. I'm excited.
I guess, Alex, then, where do you stand on the manager? What kind of profile would you like to see? Are you happy with the XG hipster appointment, or do you want to see a hard man like Sean Dyche come in with obvious links to the hierarchy that are in the club now? You can't say I just want a winning manager. You can't say I just want a winning manager.
That's a cop out, a total cop out. No, I'm going to go further than Ross. I'm right into the XG thing, the hipster thing. I don't want to have heard of him. The problem with David Ancelotti is I've heard of him, even though he's never managed in his own right, because his dad and all that. His profile. I want it to be somebody who has won like an amateur cup in the Rhine or the Ruhr or something, I don't know, kind of German third division sides, and they had a really good result against Eintracht Frankfurt in the last 64 of the German Cup last season, and he had to retire at 19 because of a skiing accident. All that kind of thing. He's just, you don't want anybody who's had the inconvenience of a playing career having stopped them studying the data for the extra 10, 15 years that these guys are too busy playing football. Just don't have the time for. We've been through 2 managers a season for the last 4 seasons. We're going to have another manager shortly. Look at Chelsea. Chelsea, a week on Wednesday, they could become the first club ever to win 4 completely separate European competitions. They're already one of only 2 European clubs to have won all the 3 traditional tournaments more than once each. So they did that 9 years. They won the Winners' Cup in the 70s, then in the 90s. Obviously, different managers then. But what was it, a period of 9 years? They won the Champions League in 2012, Roberto Di Matteo. Then they won it again 21 with Thomas Tuchel. In between times, they won the Europa League 2013 with Rafa Benitez, and 2019 with Maurizio Sarri. And it'll be, what's his game, Maresca, the guy that scored for Seville. He's going to be another manager that wins in the Conference League this season. So this situation where the managers are perpetually changing, or the head coach is perpetually changing, but the players, for example, the most consistent thing at Rangers just now is James Tavernier and us, the support. You know, it's not necessarily a bad model. It's not the model we've been trying for with the managers of recent times, but we have got a European final out of it, which is quite major. We did Gerrard, the guy that was there for 3 seasons. He won his league at a canter eventually. So again, I'm going to harp on about infrastructure. I just want to know the model. I just want to know what we're trying to do. And but under this new regime, under this new ownership, and is it going to be a case of the head coach is somebody who can change, every year, but there's still that sense of stability. So in that sense, I'm really happy that we're still buying players even though the management thing's right up in the air just now, because it shows a kind of internal consistency within the club, and that's the way to go. That the head coach is just that, the head coach. It's somebody who's just a part of an overarching kind of strategy, an overall machine within the whole club. So there's no great ructions when the manager has to get sacked, when it's not working. It's just like one of the players getting injured or something like that. So I'm really interested in the whole structure, but I don't like going back, even though we went back to Walter Smith and I get the greatest period of my life, probably supporting Rangers from Walter's second period coming back. But I probably wouldn't go back to Gerrard if I had the choice, but I would have no problem with it, obviously, for what he did for us. But I'm just interested again to see what the new owners want to do. And as long as it's somebody I've not heard of, if Davide Ancelotti does wet my whistle, though, I do like the idea.
And I guess on that bombshell, we could probably talk for probably another half an hour about what the permutations of what the summer and new management and new players could look like. But it's bad enough getting one of our incoming signings players wrong, but running over an hour, Frankie definitely take me off hosting and podding duties if I did that. So I just want to say a massive thank you to both my guests tonight, Alex. As always, mate, really good to chat to you. Thank you very much for coming on.
Pleasure, Rob. Thank you, sir.
Ross, great to break the duck and get on a pod with you, mate. It was lovely. Thanks very much, mate.
No, thank you for having me.
As well as being live on YouTube tonight, the show will be available on all podcasting platforms. That's iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher, etc. as well in the coming days. There's going to be a bonus pod coming to you on Thursday night. I think around about 9 o'clock. Ben is going to be hosting that, being joined by Alan and Scott. I think they're going to do a bit of a review, a bit of a deeper review on the squad, etc. All that's left for me to say is a massive thank you to all of you tuning in live and listening again. It's been a difficult season. Glad to see the back of it, but we appreciate the support that you've shown the pod during this time. For me personally, it's always therapeutic coming on and talking to the guys. It's helped me deal with the ups and downs over the season. So see you once again when the season starts anew, ready to do it all over again and hopefully talk about winning league.